Good evening, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Worldwide Wednesdays, halfway through the week, and honestly, we have ourselves a bit of a stream today. A lot happening over the weekend, of course, that we didn't get to cover yet, such as Iran and Russia. But there's also the fact that Marco Rubio continues to threaten Europe, which is really, really weird. Also, great news! Netanyahu, Benjamin, the Prime Minister of Israel, the guy who is in charge of, advocating for and going after and ordering the genocide of Palestinians, has been diagnosed with blood cancer. May he die a slow, painful, but also rapid death. Because the sooner he's out of the picture, hopefully the better off the whole world will be. That being said, maybe Trump can join him later. So on that note, I did update this screen so that there's a little bit more of, I guess, the content creator stuff of like how to reach us and where to go and all that fun stuff. So, anywho, excuse me. Schedule over here, socials, and website over there. Hello, Anna. See, I'm trying to think. I think that's enough. Oh, wait, no. For those of you who are joining us as regular reviewers, thank you for joining. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And those of you who may be new to the stream, please also like, share, and subscribe. It helps us build our platform and our reach. We are also actively running for U.S. House of Representatives, Ohio's 15th Congressional District, in the Republican primary against Mike Carey, who is returning his Les Wexner money. So we definitely have some shout outs to do. I should probably say that I'm running for Congress up there too. 48th president. Hold on. Let me fix that. 48th president. Is that the right one? Okay. Properties. Oh, damn. That's a bit long, isn't it? Now this is a really big... Let's just put a bunch of different shit in here so it looks really busy, right? Hello, Sci-Fi the Great. What's up? Thanks for making it as well. Yeah, that's way too big. Hold on. We're going to lower the font size on that just a smidgen. 60 maybe? There we go. You could put it underneath 48th president. Yeah, but... Oh, here we go. Here we go. Let's do this. That's better. That's way better. I like that more. Okay. Anywho, whenever we make it to this screen, it's going to be a bit busier. We're going to be enclosing ourselves from the red and gold font. All right. Not that those are communist colors or anything. So, it looks like Twitch's viewer count keeps jumping up and down. So, I'm just going to assume there's 40,000 of you watching and giving you the show of a lifetime. BB is denying the cancer rumors. Well, too fucking bad. We want him to die. So, live your life in such a way that if there's rumors about you having a cancer diagnosis, it doesn't immediately fill the entire world with joy and celebration. So, with that being said, let's get right into the video, yeah? Russia and Ukraine set to hold talks in Geneva as other attacks rock thousands of Ukrainians. So, we're starting off with Geneva, I know how to say it. And then we're moving our way down. So let's jump in right there. And jump.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian and Russian officials are set to hold another round of brokered talks, U.S. brokered talks, in Geneva today. Now, that meeting comes as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky says tens of thousands of people were left without heating or water after Russia launched a massive overnight aerial attack. CBS News senior.
You know, there is this consistency of America hosts a peace talk, and then the country that's being the aggressor attacks the other country just vehemently leading up to the talks. It's happened with Russia. It's happened with Israel. And I'm pretty certain, what other one did we try and negotiate? Wasn't it like... Oh, yeah, when we were trying to negotiate with Israel and Iran, and Israel attacked Iran again. So, yeah. Every time America tries to negotiate with two countries or mediate between two countries, the aggressors always end up attacking. That's a really weird coincidence.
Senior foreign correspondent Holly Williams brings us more from the Ukrainian capital of Kyiv.
Expectations for the negotiations today in Switzerland are low because Ukraine and Russia are still a long way apart on two fundamental issues: territory and security guarantees for Ukraine. Now, Russia currently controls around 20% of Ukraine's land, but over nearly 4 years of grinding war, those territorial gains are thought to have cost Russia over 1 million casualties. Russia's demanded more Ukrainian territory as part of any ceasefire deal, but Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky posted on social media yesterday that it would be a, quote, big mistake to allow the aggressor to take something. Meanwhile, Ukraine, which has been invaded twice by Russia in recent years, wants security guarantees from its friends, including the US, to stop more Russian assaults in the future. This war was started by Vladimir Putin nearly 4 years ago, has forced millions of Ukrainians from their homes and killed around 15,000 civilians, according to the UN. This winter, the weather here in Ukraine has been particularly harsh, with temperatures well below zero. And part of Russia's strategy has been to strike Ukraine's power grid, leaving Ukrainians with a disrupted supply of electricity and heat in the freezing conditions.
Well, there's really not much to talk about with this conflict, given that, you know, this is a pretty one-sided war, and if Europe isn't going to support the Ukraine, they are going to inevitably lose. The other problem is Russia may have lost a lot or had a lot of casualties, but that's how Russia fights wars. I mean, historically speaking, Russia damn near invented the Pyrrhian victory. Like, if Pyrrhus, the Roman general, had not existed prior to that being coined, it would have been a Russian general, and we would have been calling it Vladimir victories or something like that, because most of Russian wars that have been fought and won, they have had more casualties or significant casualties. That being said, you know, the fact that the United States is trying to broker the peace, or the fact that the European Union is so unwilling to actually commit to anything substantial, to actually force the issue, right? Because, so here's the thing, right? If Europe was actually serious about getting Russia to back off, then Europe would show military force or inclination to use military force, which would be far too costly for Russia to continue. If Russia has lost or suffered 1 million casualties against just Ukraine, regardless of where the weapons came from, but the Ukrainian military has levied 1 million casualties against the Russian military, if the EU actually full force supported the Ukraine, Russia would be forced to contend with that fact. And they have clearly shown an inability to overwhelm the Ukrainian military or modern weapon systems. So if Germany, England, and France actually backed up the Ukraine, if America had backed up the Ukraine with actual military personnel, weapons, and financial commitment, it would force Russia to the bargaining table a lot sooner with a lot less demands. So it is what it is. Not to say, more violence for the sake of peace, but if there is no incentive to stop the violence, then there's no incentive to stop the... Does that make sense? Like, if the Ukraine can't stop Russia, Russia is winning, and the EU is unwilling to actually commit, why would Russia stop the war? And why would they stop the war with less concessions? Like, think about it. Russia's the aggressor. They are winning, and they want stuff. And the EU is uncommittal. As far as Russia's concerned, they won and are continuing to win. And they can continue to push because eventually they'll win. And Russian people apparently don't mind the million casualties. America does. America hates losing soldiers, especially boats. Boats aren't soldiers, boats aren't people, but when America loses boats, we lose our fucking minds, right? So the what's the word? The resilience of the Russian people to see 4 years and 1 million casualties and still support the war effort is kind of indicative that Russia feels no pressure from within or without to stop. So, watch streak reached. Ana Ladiosa is on a 50 stream streak. Let's go! Good job, Anna. I wonder if that showed up in chat at all. All right, let's get back to the stream. Sorry. Here we go. Al Jazeera. With a slow internet.
There's been no breakthrough in the two-day talks between Ukraine and Russia here in Geneva. This was the third round of talks. The previous two sessions were held in Abu Dhabi under the mediation of the United States. Both sides say there has been progress that has been made, but the major issues such as the territorial gains that Russia has made in Ukrainian territory, other issues such as who will be the peacekeeping force if there is a ceasefire, and other issues still remain pending. Although, if you look at the American yardstick, then bringing all sides together was in itself a success. So the talks have not broken down, but they have not really yielded in any results.
Which is what I just talked about. Now, hold on a second here. I'm kind of curious, because there's only 1,000 views on a 17 million subs channel. Do people just not give a shit about Ukraine anymore? What are their average video views? Like, look at this. 100K, 52K, 329K, 33, 148, and 10. I mean, I guess it does seem all over the place. And then, yeah, 1,000 for the rest of them. Okay, so I guess Al Jazeera really doesn't get that many views consistently. It's weird. Oh, okay, what? So, corruption scandal.
Ukraine's former energy minister, who was forced out of government in a corruption scandal, has been arrested while trying to leave the country. German Gulashenko.
Imagine that. Other countries in the world with democracies and so on and so forth keep arresting their corrupt politicians. Imagine that. What would that be like, I wonder?
Was one of several government figures implicated in an alleged $100 million embezzlement scheme in November, a scandal that has threatened Volodymyr Zelensky's administration and increased pressure on the Ukrainian president from Washington to hold elections, which have been suspended since the start of the war in 2020.
Which is ridiculous too, right? I mean, Zelensky's a de facto dictator, and even his administration is doing more against corruption than our regime, our government. So, I mean, that's kind of funny. Okay, hold on. This next one is actually far more interesting. Sorry, I don't know what it is, but this week I have not been sleeping well, or I'm just super tired and drained. I don't know what it is, so I do apologize.
The Kremlin has strong...
But hold on a second. Kremlin denies killing Alexei Navalny with dart frog poison. Like, the Russians really are virtuosos of assassinations. Like, they have so much creativity when it comes to assassinating. Like, they still undergo the mafia tactics and, like, the old school Cold War stuff, you know, like throwing people out of buildings, using poison dart frogs, you know, just all this weird shit. Like, you gotta hand it to them.
Strongly strongly rejected accusations that it's responsible for the death of the jailed opposition leader Alexei Navalny on the second anniversary of his death. The UK and other European nations have accused Russia of murdering Mr. Navalny, who was a fierce critic of Vladimir Putin, using poison developed from a toxin found in a South American dart frog. Steve Rosenberg reports now from Moscow.
It was freezing cold in Moscow, but Russians came to honour his memory. Alexei Navalny was President Putin's staunchest critic. It's 2 years since his death behind bars. On this winter day, the snow never seemed to end, and neither did the tributes. The mountain of flowers, the candles, and the messages. This one reads, "Hi Alexei, we remember you. You're a hero." Outside the cemetery, close attention was being paid to those arriving here. Slipping in unnoticed wasn't an option.
It takes quite a bit of courage just to do what these people are doing here today, just to bring flowers to the grave of the man who was the Kremlin's most vocal critic. Courage because some people who were associated with Alexei Navalny and who supported him have since been targeted by the authorities.
Interesting. Political prosecution and persecution, murdering of political dissidents, and then targeting of people who are political dissidents. Sound familiar? Like, it just seems like that's happening somewhere close to home. Like, very close to home. And in fact, it might actually be our home. Sorry, did that funny thing where I remembered I needed to eat, so I'm back. Well, welcome back. I hope you're full. That's why I bring snacks so that I can stress eat during the stream. But yeah, so I guess, you know. And this one actually has 44,000 views. All right, so at least we care about dissenting against Ruskovia. Okay. So I know we're kind of running through this. I know it seems like I don't care about Russia and Ukraine because we're not taking as much time on it as we do for some of the other things. But unfortunately, the news that surrounds the Ukraine and Russia is kind of straightforward, right? Like, there is no egregious dystopian nightmare things. There isn't genocide. There's war crimes. There's crimes against humanity. Yeah, I mean, the first clip showed Russia shelling an apartment complex. Like, that's definitely bad. That's not okay. But there's not much else to say, like, with regards to Russia and Ukraine. Russia is fighting a conflict. Ukraine's fighting a conflict. They're doing a tit-for-tat back and forth, but Russia is winning. And Europe is kind of dragging its feet and then trying to fearmonger at the same time. There's just not as much to talk about because it's been consistent for the past 4 years. And that consistency of just not much happening. Like, much... And see, this is what makes it sound terrible. It's... As far as warfare goes, this is the closest thing to a conventional war that we have seen. And maybe it's because we're so desensitized to the global war on terror that hearing about, you know, invading Baghdad and Afghanistan and Iraq for 20 years maybe has desensitized Americans to it. So when it's a war that seems like a normal conflict, there's just not much to talk about. But when it's genocide, when it's ethnic cleansing, when it's, you know, backed by multiple sides of the world or the world is refusing to acknowledge that what's happening is actually happening, like in the Sudan or in Palestine, it just makes it much more necessary to talk about. So I apologize. Want to know what y'all should watch? Cabaret hits a bit close to home. Oh, the movie. Yeah. I was like, what's Cabaret? Dem Saga. I don't know what the in it Israel is, but hello, Dem Saga. I don't care that much about Russia, Ukraine. I feel bad for the people. And that's kind of what I'm saying is, like, it's a conflict between powers and ego that causes people to suffer. Ah, okay. Dems again. Oh, it's not Dem Saga. I'm literate, I promise. All right. Dems against Israel. That makes a lot more sense. Okie dokie. So, now we're going to talk about Iran. Now, Iran we might be a little bit more emotional and invested in, not because we're against Iran,
United States and Iran,
but because what's going on in Iran is this close to leveraging World War III. We have, 2 fleets, 1/3 of the entire Navy within striking distance of Iran. You have Israel demanding that the United States attacks Iran and making it harder and harder to negotiate about nuclear enrichment, right? Israel's like, no enrichment whatsoever. And America's like, bro, you need to chill out. And Netanyahu's like, I will release more blackmail files unless you do this. So Iran is a bit scarier because if we get embroiled in a full-scale war, right? And don't get me wrong, invading Venezuela and kidnapping Maduro is awful. Occupying Venezuela after the fact, awful. Not good. Very scary. However, the rest of the world is not doing anything about it. If we invade Iran, that triggers bad things. So Iran is a significantly bigger fish that we really don't want to fry. Not even the movie, the 1993 Sam Mendes production, free on YouTube. Alan Cummings' performance as MC is amazing. Okay, I'll take your word for it. We usually don't watch movies, and we haven't had a let your hair down Friday in a long time because, well, when you work during the week and you're streaming, it gets pretty physically and mentally taxing. But suffice to say, if we ever get around to fundraising a shit ton of money to where I can quit my job and we can focus more on community building, absolutely. We might integrate something like that. All right, Iran.
Iran have finished a new round of negotiation about the future of...
Oh, that reminds me. This guy. Did you cuss him out for me, Anna? Major Garrett? I mean, I know he didn't actually bring the guy on his show like we thought it was at first, but I want to be on the show and I want to shake my fist. Maybe asking politely isn't how we get on there. We should be like, you will have Sam Ronan on your podcast March 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you will interview him because he deserves it, you jerk face. Maybe we need to, be a little bit more, that's not assertive, but aggressive in it. He's Kate Winslet's husband? Or is that somebody else?
That country's nuclear program and other issues. The Iranian foreign minister said an understanding was reached on, quote, guiding principles. A U.S. official said progress was made, but significant gaps remain, and that much work needs to be done. CBS News national security contributor Samantha Vinograd joins me now. Sam, always good to have you.
It is always good to have me, Major Garrett. Thanks for having me. I am Sam. Oh, wait, that lady.
This sounds like pretty typical diplomatic language. Oh, principles, work to be done. What struck me is a U.S. official said there's going to be a 2-week gap to wait back for the Iranians. Okay, we're rushing all this military equipment to the region. 2 weeks. How do we interpret that?
Well,
and before she answers, when we talk about rushing all of this military equipment into the region, 1/3 of the U.S. Navy is within striking distance of Iran. Now, I was in the United States Air Force. The Air Force, at the time, had a budget of $300 billion. The Marine Corps, around $200 billion. The Army and the Navy each was at around $500 or $700 billion. I don't remember what their budget was off the top of my head, but it was substantial. In terms of manning, there were, I believe, twice as many Navy seamen than Air Force, and about a similar number of soldiers from the Army, right? So The two biggest branches in our military is the Army and the Navy, right? And 1/3 of the Navy is probably about the complete accompaniment of the Air Force. Now, let's do it modern times so we're not going too crazy, right? Navy personnel totals versus Air Force, 2026. Oh, so I was right. Around the 300,000 and 700,000. Oh, wow. Wait, what? The Navy shrank precipitously. That can't be right. What? That's fucking wild. Since when? Okay, well, the Navy used to be much, much bigger than the Air Force. That's... the fuck? That's not good. That's... okay. So, I mean, the Navy used to outnumber the Air Force substantially. Apparently, I am wrong. Okay, then. Unless this is misinformation to keep our enemies on their toes. But, okay, then. I mean, we still have the largest Navy, 4.5 million. That part doesn't matter. So, we have... okay, but 1/3 of our fleet is 1.5 million tons of vessels and where's Iran again? So it would have to be, so if this is Iran, we would be, so the Arabian Sea. So 1/3 of the U.S. Navy is right here in the Arabian Sea. Oh, wait. There's what I'm at right there. 1/3 of the Navy is right around here. 1/3! Now, granted, when you see the whole map of the world, you're like, well, Sam, that's not that scary. Right? Like, the world is a pretty fucking big place. Right, it is. But we're also the largest Navy by, like, no small margins, right? And we have 1/3 of our total naval forces here pointing our guns at Iran. And now we're taking a 2-week break. And we've already invaded Venezuela after putting a shit ton of our Navy equipment in Venezuela, in the Caribbean Sea. And I think from the time that we started posturing vessels in the Caribbean Sea to the point where we actually invaded Venezuela, I think was a matter of weeks. 6-7 weeks. Now, that would be a much more accelerated timeline because I think with Iran, we're at like week 3 or 4. But that's still pretty damn close. That 2 weeks would be that 6 to 7 week time frame. That's not good. The implications are real. Maybe my timelines are off. Here it is. There's the timeline. Perfect. Jesus fucking Christ. No thanks. No subscription. Stop paywalling me. Okay. August 19th. Okay, well that's good at least. It might be months then. And that's not good, by the way. Like, months is still fucking bad. Now, granted, September 2nd was when we did our first strikes in the region to intimidate. But these strikes aren't necessarily posturing. Jesus Christ. All right, here we go. I would say October 24th is the date that we're looking for. Okay. So October 24th until January 3rd. So I don't know how many days that is. Actually, you know what? I can probably Google that too. 71 days. 71 days from actual military posturing or positioning, I guess. Escalation. Until we actually invaded. So I guess the next question would be, when did we send ships to the Arabian Sea? January 26th. Okay. Which is just... So, 3 weeks after we invaded Venezuela, we're sending ships into the Arabian Sea to intimidate Iran. So, at best, 71 days after January 26th, 2026 is April 7th. So, at best, on average so far, we will have until April 7th before we're invading Iran. And if we're doing it in the next 2 weeks, which would be March... Let's just say generously 7th or 8th. That would be literally half the time. Which is not only escalation, but accelerationism as well. And this regime has proven a willingness to attack and invade countries, whether or not there is public or international support of such an endeavor. And invading Iran is going to have severe consequences. First of all, let's look at this map again. Duplicate. Iran map. Just to put into perspective how big Iran is. Okay. This is Iran. Iran is bigger than Germany and France put together. You can fit the entire UK in Iran. Like the Ireland and UK, Scotland, all of these islands, you can fit comfortably in Iran. Iran also has 80 million people in it, with a commensurate military, and a boatload of countries in the region that would back up Iran, especially against the United States. So this is bad, right? This is also bad, right? Ukraine is actually a bit smaller than Iran. But the Russia-Ukraine offensive is because the rest of Europe isn't doing anything about it. If we attack Iran, we're once again threatening Iraq, Afghanistan, threatening Pakistan, Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan, Turkey, which is technically supposed to be an ally, but I don't know, we'll probably find a way to find them to be a problem. The UAE, Oman, and Saudi Arabia, which is also an ally, but would Saudi Arabia remain an ally if we attacked Iran? And I'm willing to bet the answer is no. Also, because we're in the Arabian Sea, that means we're threatening Yemen and Eritrea and Djibouti and Somalia. Which Yemen is already closing off this strait right here, which allows you to actually enact trade, which goes into Israel. And I think there's a strait, the Suez Canal, that actually allows you to go into the Mediterranean. So, being in the Arabian Sea is a regional disaster. And if we actually follow through with this attack, we could dramatically upend this entire region of the world, which is, as you can imagine, a majority part of the world. So, not a good, feel-good thing at all. Yeah, no, I wasn't trying to rely on the Google AI there. Let's see. I just got a call from Minneapolis. And they hung up on you? Oh my goodness. Well, I guess you've done way too many anti-ICE posting. Ramadan started today. They'll probably call the Operation Ramadan Surprise. Yeah, probably. Oh my God. Wait a minute. Is that why they might be breaking for 2 weeks as Ramadan? Not that I can imagine that the U.S. would be respecting another culture or religion, but yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if we attacked during Ramadan. It has the same population of Mexico. Also, Ukraine kind of was asking for it with the Nazis. Sci-Fi the Great is not aware of the events that led up to the Ukraine-Russian war. If you want to add that in chat, you can certainly do so.
Timeline problem. If you look back at the original Iran nuclear deal, which Donald Trump withdrew from during his first term, that took about 2 years to negotiate. So when we talk about 2 weeks, it's actually a really short amount of time. When you're talking about some fundamental strategic gaps, the United States wants to address a range of what we call malign behaviors by the Iranian regime. Its nuclear program, its ballistic missile program, its support for proxies, its human rights abuses. And the Iranians are saying
I like how we just constantly blame other countries for abusing human rights. Meanwhile, we have a secret police force murdering American citizens in cold blood, and we have concentration camps with thousands of children in them. And somehow that's not a human rights abuse?
just going to negotiate on the nuclear front. So guiding principles are one thing, but there are these big strategic gaps, and the United States may not be patient enough to wait the 20 months that it may take to negotiate another deal.
And yet, and we've talked about this before, Sam, there is a dialogue going on quite separate from these talks in the region. Maybe this isn't the time. Maybe this is the time to keep talking and continue to apply the pressure, use the implied threat of a larger, more visible U.S. military presence.
Okay. Why the implied military invasion by a foreign adversary is not a diplomatic tool. That is literally threatening war. That's not diplomacy. That's you will do this or else. That is literally pointing a gun at somebody's head and saying you will do as I say or I will pull this trigger. I can't. Jeez. Hey, we're not blaming you, Sci-Fi. We're just saying that it is a bit more of a complicated thing, and Anna has the link to educate you on it. Okay. I guess we're gonna listen to U.S. propaganda. Part 2. Is YouTube
The U.S. military
struggling?
is preparing for potential operations with Iran if President Trump orders an attack. Iran's top diplomat has arrived in Geneva.
First of all, I was active duty and stationed in Okinawa when North Korea was testing its long-range ballistic missiles, and that was scary enough because that was the first time I ever went to like an extremely heightened state of readiness for the base in my active duty time. Thankfully, it was also the only time I had to go to a heightened state of readiness during active duty. If you are active duty now, no matter where you are in the world, you're pretty much bouncing between, and I don't know if it's considered secret anymore, so let's just say readiness level 1, which is just, we're military, right? We're always a target, but there's no actual threat going on. Right, you'd be facilitating between there isn't an actual threat going on, readiness level 1, to readiness level we're about to get attacked any second now. Just like this. Like a fan just going around. Like, it has to be stressful being active duty right now.
Geneva ahead of what's being described as indirect talks with the U.S. tomorrow. For more, let's bring in CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata. He joins us now from our Washington bureau. So, Charlie, you've been speaking with people about these U.S. preparations. What can you tell us?
Yeah, Lindsay's speaking with them every day, sometimes several times a day, to try to figure out what, from a military standpoint, what the game plan is. So there have been reports over the weekend, I can confirm those, that the United States could be preparing for a prolonged conflict. Of course, the United States is preparing for a prolonged conflict because the United States military prepares for any contingency, best case scenario to worst case scenario. And I'll tell you, there's nothing better than the Pentagon for preparing for worst case scenarios.
Yeah, sure. There is nothing better than the United States military for preparing for war because we're pretty much the only country in the world that's been at war consistently for the past 250 years. That being said, Pete Hegseth is at the head of the Department of Defense, and he's a fucking idiot, and he keeps firing black people and women because they're black people and women from positions of power and authority with the experience to make those plans, and then elevates racists and pedophiles to those positions. So I wouldn't be so confident in our military readiness, is all I'm saying.
So the way it was described to me is you look at it as tiers. There are a number of targets, sort of surgical strikes that the United States, if President Trump decides and the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the Pentagon and Secretary Hegseth decide that this is the plan to take surgical strikes within the regime itself, or you would take out missile launchers, or you would go after Iran's nuclear facilities, but you have to be prepared for retaliation. So if you really want to tell for what's going on there, you look at the Lincoln aircraft carrier that's been there for a few weeks, and it was ordered there because of the tensions rising in Iran. It's actually unique for that area, Central Command, CENTCOM, to not be without a carrier. Well, now there's a second one, and this is a significant move because they're moving the USS Gerald R. Ford from the Caribbean, where it was already extended. In fact, it's on, I think, its second extension now. Wow. So by the end of whatever this is, if it were to turn, as the military terms it, kinetic, that they would actually be engaged in a fighting war with Iran, you're looking at a carrier that is certainly looking down the barrel of one of the longest deployments, peacetime deployments, for decades. So that suggests that you're going to have two carriers in the region, a number of F-18 fighter jets, F-35 fighter jets that comes with, a number of destroyers, because it's not just a carrier, but destroyers with guided missiles on there. So you are talking about a package that is preparing for the worst, and not only preparing to strike.
You know, I gotta keep pointing out that the way these people talk about 1/3 of the U.S. naval forces arriving off the coast of another country while we are threatening them blatantly during negotiations is so blasé. Like, they're trying to make it sound like we're just moving pieces across a chessboard or a game board or something like that. Like, oh, if things get kinetic, oh, if we move this hardware here or there, if we have these packages ready to be delivered. It's like, you're talking about sending 1/3 of the Navy, the active duty Navy, down the throat of a foreign country because our pedophile president is too busy being a dictator and a pedophile that he will do literally anything to distract from the fact that he is a pedophile and a dictator and a traitor, compromised by Israel and potentially Russia and potentially other countries to boot. So we have a pedophile traitor who is trying to dismantle the Constitution, waging one war already against Venezuela, and is threatening to do it again to Iran, to distract from the fact that he is a traitorous, pedophile piece of shit. So I think we kind of need to hit those points a little bit, just a little bit.
This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We turn now to news from the latest round of talks between the U.S. and Iranian officials, which took place in Geneva, Switzerland, Tuesday, against a backdrop of heightened saber-rattling between the two nations. President Trump's ordered a buildup of U.S. forces in the region, including 2 aircraft carriers, dozens of warships, hundreds of fighter jets, and multiple air defense.
By the way, when you're deployed in the Navy on a boat, you're only supposed to be at sea for 6 months, right? And they got extended for another 6 months, and now they're going to get extended for another 6 months. That's 18 months at sea. Now, that is 18 months on one boat. Maybe there's a little bit of port in between there, but you haven't seen your friends. You haven't seen your family. You haven't seen your loved ones for 3 months, right? On top of that, the morale. Let's just be very real. There might be, 9,000 people, 6,000 people per carrier, but all naval vessels rotate the same sleeping quarters between 3 people across 3 shifts. Yeah, that's as bad as you think it is. Also, it's a deployment, meaning you might have days off, per se, where you're not necessarily doing work, but you're still on a boat. You are still literally on that vessel. The morale of this carrier has to be plummeting rapidly. On top of that, this particular vessel is being commanded and crewed by seamen, sailors, there we go, that was the other word I was looking for, sorry. Sailors who are actively obeying unlawful orders. Right? Because they invaded Venezuela and kidnapped the president. Which you just, without congressional approval or any of that, right? Now we're going to Iran to assault and threaten and intimidate Iran. Meanwhile, the president who is ordering these things is a pedophile and very likely a traitor to the country, meaning any order he issues is illegal. And if it's coming from the Secretary of Defense that he appointed, it's double illegal. You see where I'm going with this? The military, by following any orders whatsoever from this regime, is de facto following unlawful orders. And the fact that the military isn't demanding investigations and trials and arrests of everybody that's been implicated in the Epstein files is an absolute abject failure of our entire democracy and our democratic processes. But Sam, the military isn't mentioned in the Constitution. They don't have political power. They're not a branch of government. Sure. But they do have an obligation and a responsibility to national security. And if the President of the United States is an enemy, a domestic threat to the Constitution, guess what you're not supposed to be doing? Obeying those orders. This isn't speculation. This isn't rocket science. This is literally the oath. It's literally the mandate and the reason why the military exists. And if the president is compromised, then the military is obligated to intervene. Granted, not just if the president is compromised, right? Because ideally, the Supreme Court and Congress would have already dealt with that. But if everybody's complicit, fine. The military doesn't have to intervene by, military takeover, throwing everybody into the break, and then holding special elections. That's not the purview of the military. But the military can and should refuse orders until it is resolved. The military should be like, hey, listen, we're the military. We will continue to defend our country, our homeland. We will continue to do our missions in foreign countries and in foreign waters because that's what we've been doing, right? We will continue to operate. But we will not move an inch. We will not obey a single solitary order from this regime until they are fully investigated for treason, for the crimes outlined in the files. Because until or unless they are truly vindicated, like unequivocally vindicated, we cannot trust that these orders are coming from a duly elected person who is acting on behalf of the interests of America and not Israel or Russia. And I feel like that's pretty goddamn reasonable. As a veteran and swore the oath and
defense systems. On Friday, President Trump told reporters regime change in Iran would, quote, be the best thing that could happen, unquote. Shortly after the talks began, Iran temporarily closed the Strait of Hormuz, a key international waterway. And Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned, quote, the strongest army in the world might sometimes receive such a slap that it cannot get back on its feet, unquote.
Yeah, because, I mean, and we talked about that in the map here. The Strait of Hormuz is it this? Maybe it's this area right here, right there. Strait of Hormuz. They close this off, which leads into this major trade area, which can lead to over into the Caspian Sea, into the Black Sea, and into the Mediterranean Sea. So, this being shut down, big fucking deal. And if America tries to go into here, huge, big fucking deal. So, just throwing that all out there.
After Tuesday's talks, Iran's foreign minister cautioned more work still needs to be done on reaching a nuclear deal, but expressed some optimism about the negotiations.
I can say that in this round, there were quite serious discussions and a more constructive atmosphere than in the previous round. Various ideas were raised, and these ideas were seriously discussed, and finally we were able to reach a general agreement on a series of guiding principles. From now on, we will move based on those principles and enter into the text of a possible agreement.
3 unnamed Iranian officials told the New York Times Iran had indicated an openness to suspend nuclear enrichment for 3 to 5 years in exchange for lifting sanctions and the embargo on its oil sales. Vice President J.D. Vance, speaking on Fox News, painted a more mixed picture of the talks.
I think the president has a lot of options. We do have a very powerful military. The president's shown a willingness to use it.
This motherfucker. We have quite a few options, the military being one of them. Motherfucker. You are the vice president of the United States of America. You are representing millennials from Ohio, veteran millennials from Ohio, white men, veteran millennials from Ohio. And you are a fucking idiot. An absolute fucking moron. J.D. Vance is like, hey, we're negotiating with another country about diplomatic things such as nuclear enrichment. But one of the negotiating tools that we are going to use and that this pedophile traitor has already shown a willingness to use is the military, which, by the way, in case you've forgotten, he is a 5-time draft dodger who has called Gold Star families who have survived their loved ones, i.e. people who have died in combat, suckers and losers. Donald Trump, traitor and pedophile, insults our service members and never served and actually went out of his way not to serve. Is using the military as his personal negotiation tool for his own grandiose aggrandizement, whatever bullshit. And JD Couch fucking Vance is beating his chest as if that's a good thing. Fuck you, J.D. Vance, and fuck you, Donald J. Trump. As far as I'm concerned, you're both traitors. And as far as the Epstein files are concerned, you're traitors and possibly pedophiles, or at the very least, J.D. Vance is a pedophile protector. Continue.
Also has a remarkable diplomatic team. He's shown a willingness to use that too. And so what the president has been very clear with the Iranians, and actually I just talked to Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner this morning about some of the
Also, Jared Kushner, the nepotism. Why is Jared Kushner being involved in any sort of international affairs whatsoever in an official capacity? If that isn't, I forget the word now. I want to say, I mean, that's not the emoluments clause, because that's not, I mean, Jared Kushner isn't himself. I forget the phrase, like the technical term that is, but like putting your family members in positions of authority and power, I mean, that's at the very least corruption. Like, blatant description, definitive of corruption.
their negotiations is the United States has certain red lines. Our primary interest here is we don't want Iran to get a nuclear weapon.
For more, we're joined in Washington, D.C. by Trita Parsi, Executive Vice President of the Quincy Institute for Responsible Statecraft, author of...
Well, if you were so worried about countries not having nuclear weapons, maybe you shouldn't let the nuclear arms treaty lapse with Russia. And then reinvesting in nuclear weapons testing and research development. Christ, do I actually have to put... Oh, that's right, I do. I actually have to add non-nuclear proliferation on the website because that treaty fell off. Jesus H. Christ, I forgot about that. And what else did I need to do? I swear, I just... This is so frustrating. This is genuinely frustrating.
Several books, including Losing an Enemy, Obama, Iran, and the Triumph of Diplomacy. Trita Parsi, talk about what's happening in Geneva, the U.S. moving in aircraft carriers, one the largest in the world, the USS Gerald Ford, which he had...
No, the USS Gerald Ford is the largest carrier in the world. And I think the second largest carrier is the Lincoln.
Just previously, Trump had off the coast of Venezuela, where they attacked Venezuela and then abducted the president, Maduro, and his wife.
Well, I'm glad she's using those words.
We have a very dangerous situation because both sides actually believe that a short, intense war may improve their negotiating position. The Trump administration, of course, believes that because of its overwhelming military power that it has now gathered in the vicinity of Iran, it will be able to take out Iran militarily rather quickly and then force it to capitulate. The Iranians have a different calculation. They believe that they have the ability to inflict significant damage on the United States in the short term, including on civilian oil installations in the region, closing down the Strait of Hormuz that would shoot up oil prices. And the initial cost of this to the United States would be so immense. And the United States would recognize that it would have to go for a longer war, which it cannot afford. And as a result, it would get the United States to back off. Essentially, the Iranians are counting on the U.S. having a much lower threshold for pain tolerance than what the Iranians have. And they're basing this partly on how the Houthis fought back against the U.S. for several weeks, and eventually Trump essentially lost interest in it and did not want to have a prolonged conflict and backed off. The difference, however, is the Houthis never managed to kill an American soldier. They tried, but they didn't manage. And we have not been in a situation in which 30, 50, perhaps 200 American soldiers are killed under Donald Trump's watch. So we do not know how his psychology will react to that type of scenario. So this is an extremely dangerous situation in which both sides are actually incentivized to escalate with calculations that are completely contradictory to each other's.
Well, I may as well light this fucker up because, Jesus. So, America thinks it can obliterate Iran, which, I mean, America did obliterate Iraq during the initial invasion, we crippled the entire Iraqi infrastructure in 72 hours. I think it was actually 24 hours, and then it was complete collapse after 72. Point being, we fucked up Iraq. Even though actually, the Epstein files are revealing that the Twin Towers attack had probably nothing to do with Afghanistan or Iraq, and was probably Israel all along. But neither here nor there. The justification that we used was that they came from Afghanistan, so of course we invaded Iraq. Iran, though, is 4 times the size of Iraq and has significantly more advanced weapon systems. And I do believe China has sent some of their weapons defense systems to Iran to prevent America from getting involved. Theoretically, and I will say this, theoretically, the United States military should be able to cripple any country's infrastructure, save maybe China, because look at the sheer size of that thing, and Russia, because, I mean, Jesus Christ, look how big that is. Which I don't think that's accurate in terms of scale, but that's neither here nor there. China and Russia are too big in terms of just sheer size to cripple their entire infrastructure all at once. Plus, they also have a much larger military. Iran's infrastructure might not be able to be entirely crippled in 24 hours, but I'd say we could do 50% damage, 100%. I truly believe an all-out war, mind you. 2 naval carriers, we could probably take out all the way through to here. I definitely think we could just knock out everything here in a very short amount of time, and we could probably push into the middle within 72 hours. I truly do believe that. From a carrier strike group that makes it here, that's about an hour or 2 strike distance with aircraft. That's just capabilities of our military. And all of these major cities would definitely be within that reach. Getting into Tehran is still technically possible from this group area right here. And if we skipped all of if we skipped all of this in here, right? If we skipped all of this and went straight to Tehran, we could probably maneuver through whatever military defense systems that Iran has set up and just go after Tehran. Like, that is also a distinct possibility. In terms of military capability, I don't know if that's the kind of planning that would happen. That being said, Iran inflicting any casualties on the United States would have such a massive boost to their morale and such a massive backlash to Trump's, just credibility, I guess, I don't know, that Iran might very well benefit from the escalation far more than America would. Because America would have to commit, and Americans don't want another war. Whereas Iranians would be resisting the imperial empire, right? The U.S.-America empire, which is something that very few countries have ever tried to do, let alone succeeded in, right? So yeah, I think it's heavily in favor of Iran to escalate, which makes it worse because if there is escalation in the region, that dramatically spills over to the rest of the map. And that's what bothers me and concerns me immensely. So, now we go to Munich.
Making no other comparisons, and I mean zero, between Duval's character and Rubio, we can all agree President Trump insists on hearing bad news immediately and often responding accordingly. With more on Munich, Navalny, and Rubio's diplomacy, we turn to Elliot Abrams. He's a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations, most recently a special representative to Iran and Venezuela in the first Trump term. He also served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President George W. Bush. Elliot, always good to see you. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate your time.
Good to be here, Major.
So evaluate Munich, the Navalny angle of it, and how Europeans are regarding their future in the next year with the Trump administration.
They're worried. What most concerns them is the greatest war in Europe since World War II in Ukraine after the invasion by Russia. And Secretary Rubio's speech, they liked a lot more than last year's Vance speech. But the word Russia was not in Secretary Rubio's speech.
Yeah.
He didn't say Russia one time. So they didn't hear, an awful lot of pragmatic, practical reassurance. They heard some really lovely language about, our common history and values and all, but they didn't hear anything concrete about an American commitment to help. And this happens, as you've just finished saying, on a weekend when we're reminded that Putin kills his opponents.
Right. And Elliot, I can remember a time, now I know it was the Cold War, but there would be references by
Okay. That's a very boring back and forth, I'm not going to lie. But listen to the rhetoric. Europe is worried about America because America is clearly unhinged right now. Marco Rubio doesn't mention Russia once. And then, goes on and on about, ultimately, I'll do a bit of spark notes for you. How the white supremacist imperialism of the past 2 centuries is what brings us together. And no European country did anything other than, right? So, scary shit, right? And the very next thing that is said is, I know it's not the Cold War, but I remember the Cold War, and now I'm going to regale you with tales of the Cold War. We have idiots who were alive during a very, very scary part of time in history, in charge, reminiscing and trying to replay that scary point in time in history and win after the fact. Like, we seriously need to pass legislation that says, okay, fine. The Cold War happened. If you were alive during the Cold War, you are no longer allowed to be in office because you're clearly not over it, and we would like to move on and potentially achieve something called peace. And this needs to be passed across the globe because literally every single elected politician keeps referencing the Cold War, communist Russia, the USSR, and is trying to tie that into the present. And I hate to break it to you, modern problems have nothing to do with the Cold War. Fascism is on the rise everywhere. Technocracy on the rise everywhere. AI devastating what little of our environment remains intact. Everywhere. Right? Global warming to the point where our polar ice caps are beginning to finally melt. Global shortages on food, water, rising conflicts that are displacing millions of people globally. And then, of course, economic crises after economic crisis, because most of the world is now capitalist, which means the for-profit motive is dismantling governments and societies in real time. Guess what? That has nothing to do with Russia. That has nothing to do with communism. Has nothing to do with the Cold War. It has everything to do with the fact that we have billionaires, plural, controlling 90% of all assets on planet Earth, and are also trying to control governments on top of all the assets, while disenfranchising and displacing billions of people in the process. That is the threat. And it has, again, polar opposite. In fact, capitalism is now the greatest threat to human society and survival. We are literally talking about commodifying drinkable water, arable land, and breathable air. And that's not coming from communist Russia or the USSR or communist China or North Korea. That's coming from the European Union. Well, I guess it was like the United Nations Economic Forum. Or maybe it was the EU Economic Forum. But whatever it was an economic forum predominantly by Western countries. That is the existential threat. So maybe, just maybe, let's make grandma and grandpa fucking retire and allow millennials to take over so that we don't blow ourselves up because our great-grandparents couldn't get over the fact that communism was a thing. We are literally facing a water crisis, an economic or an ecological crisis, an air crisis, and the ability to grow food crisis. Because rich people want more. And, oh, by the way, turns out there is a global conspiracy of elitist, dark money individuals. They are all pedophiles, apparently cannibals, and ballist worshippers. And they are in charge of every government and every industry. So maybe we take care of that first. But they actually were from Saudi Arabia. Oh, from the attacks. Yeah, sorry. We keep jumping back and forth. I apologize. And of course, wouldn't be Worldwide Wednesdays if we didn't talk about Israel not just murdering Palestinians and causing genocide, but violating the ceasefire.
Four months since the ceasefire was signed, but so far we're looking at close to 600 Palestinians have been killed and close to 1,600 reported with various injuries across the Gaza Strip. Overnight, heavy artillery and gunfire were concentrated in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. Mainly, we're talking about the northern western part of the city of Beit Lahia. In Gaza City, the eastern neighborhoods, including Shajaiya, Zaytun, and Tufah, more of the explosions and the home demolition and the heavy artilleries were reported by people who live near the adjacent area of the Yellow Line. These continue to destroy and target remaining residential structure. Further, southern part of the strip, we're looking at the eastern part of Khan Yunis, where more of the explosions, the home demolition continued until early hours of the morning. Now, while the security situations remains volatile.
So, to recap, right? There is a ceasefire. There is a yellow line. Most of Gaza has been turned into rubble, and what few structures remain are being demolished by Israel. While over 1 million, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians are struggling to survive, let alone find shelter, let alone having access to anything resembling sanitary, safety, or health care conditions. So, again, Israel is still attacking Palestinians, still murdering them, still displacing them, and still demolishing what few structures remain. That is, honestly, it's getting to the point where genocide doesn't even do the justice of what's happening. It is true cultural, populist, social erasure. Trying to erase them from existence. Yes, genocide does a good job of defining that, but to the point where they are trying to erase any single presence, memory, scrap of Palestinian heritage or life. That is what is happening in the Gaza Strip. And that is beyond unacceptable.
There has been some movement at the crossings, though limited and tightly controlled. According to data obtained by the Crossing and Borders Authority, 269 trucks have been allowed into the Gaza Strip. Of this number, 190 trucks, only commercial, and 79 of humanitarian aid, including food supplies, medical materials, and fuel. Aid agencies say that the volume is not nearly enough and far below the needs of a population faces widespread shortages. As of passengers movement, Rafah crossing continue to operate on the restricted schedule. From the time it was opened back in February 2nd, the number of people until this morning is far below the number that has been agreed upon. Based on the capacity and the pace of movement announced at the crossings, there should have been close to 3,000 people moving through the crossing, but that's not the case. So while there is movement, it remains controlled, limited, and unpredictable. And as the strikes continue across different parts of the Strip, daily life remains to be shaped by two different parallel realities: ongoing violence and limited humanitarian access. Hani Mahmoud, Al Jazeera, from Gaza City, Palestine.
So, I truly hope that the Palestinians in Gaza survive long enough for me to get elected so that I can advocate on their behalf and maybe beat some fucking sense into our government. But given the economic desires of the Board of Peace to displace everybody from Gaza and turn it into a resort, and the fact that Israel is annexing the West Bank as we speak, I just... And that's actually our next video. Wonderful. Hola, Razor. Welcome to the stream. We are at the Israel and Palestine chapter of the stream, where we start crashing out.
Al Jazeera Podcasts. Today, Israel is redefining land ownership in the occupied West Bank.
This is final, this is definitive, this is maybe the last step towards annexation. It is effectively annexation, just minus the name.
But as an occupying power, can Israel make permanent changes to land ownership? I'm Kevin.
Well, Israel's been occupying the state of Palestine to the point where it created its own national identity. So if we're not going to discuss it from that angle, then what are we even talking about?
Ben Hurton, and this is The Take.
Also, he really does have a voice for radio, doesn't he? Like, I know what I sound like on microphone. I'd have to, like, kind of hold my voice to a slightly lower timbre. Hello, this is Samuel Ronan, and today we're going to talk about worldwide news. We're going to discuss the bullshit that is Israeli occupation of the Palestinian people, and how their ongoing crusade to erase the Palestinian people is ongoing and unchallenged. But I feel like if I talk like that, I'm being sarcastic, and also, it's kind of hard to talk like that for any sort of length of time. I say since America loves Israel, why not let the Israelis live in one of America's 50 states? No. And here's why. Here's why. The land of Israel is the land of Zionism. We already have fascists and Nazis in America. We already have a major, major Nazi problem. We also have a very major Zionist problem. Again, Israel, the Zionist entity, has compromised our entire federal government, potentially our military, potentially our justice system, and potentially our several states. So no. No. If the world would be so inclined to facilitate and support the establishment of a truly Jewish state in the Middle East somewhere, with a consensus between the affected countries and an agreement to turn it into like a heritage site, kind of like how Vatican City is considered like a national, like an international heritage state or whatever, like whatever the Vatican is, right? If we want to do something like that for a Jewish state, I'm all for it. But Israel ain't that. Israel is not a Jewish state. That's not anti-Semitism. That is historical fact. Israel is a Zionist state. It is an experiment to expand Zionism and utilize the Holocaust as a way to hide behind their crimes. So, no. Fuck Israel, the entire Zionist ideology, and everyone who subscribes to it. All right. Just let Palestine be for those people who want to live without war. These people are tired of continuous wars. They are human beings, not machines of war. I mean, there is that too. First we have to restore Palestine to Palestinians, which hasn't been the case since 1948. So there's definitely a lot of work to be done. All right, this is a whole podcast, so I don't think we're going to be watching that after all. Oh, right. Breaking Points. Okay, so there's going to be... Well, Breaking Points has 3 major videos. We're probably only going to watch the first couple of minutes of each of these 3 so we get to the points, but it really depends on who's doing the talking.
Jesper, want to get your reaction to a couple of recent clips of Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina. Let's roll this first one where Lindsey...
South Carolina / Tel Aviv. I
Yeah, / Tel Aviv.
He says he goes there every 2 weeks. So.
Every 2 weeks? Not bad. Probably more often than he's in...
See what I mean? America's government is compromised by Zionism. Why the fuck is a U.S. congressman going to Israel every 2 fucking weeks? Any U.S. congressman, any senator, right? Like anybody from America in government. Why are you going to Israel every 2 fucking weeks? If you were going to China or Russia or North Korea, you would be getting slaughtered in every single platform under the sun. But because it's Israel, it's okay? Yes, I would agree with you, Razor, about that. The Palestinian people welcomed Holocaust survivors and were willing to host them as refugees and survivors, but that what happened afterwards was Zionism. So Ryan Grimm is great, but he never gets to the point. You're right. That's who I thought might have been speaking. And of course, these 2 lovely ladies, Crystal and Emily, love doing a huge build-up as well. So let's get to the point, ladies.
South Carolina. All right. Here's Lindsey Graham talking about the future of wars.
The wars of the future are being planned here in Israel because if you're not one step ahead of the enemy, you suffer.
So 27 seconds in, we got to the meat. Awesome. The wars of the future are being planned here in Israel. Israel, whose intelligence agency is called Mossad, whose most famous member was Epstein, who created an international blackmail ring that blackmailed world leaders, entertainment moguls, and tech and corporate business conglomerate heads as well, who then orchestrated conflicts over the past several decades, up to and evidently including 9/11. The war against transgender people, promoting AI, promoting through their industries and their networks, the infantilization of women, and creating a beauty standard that veers towards teenage girls. So that Israel is where wars of the future are planned, much like the wars and culture wars of the past 3 decades or so. Now, if that isn't an indictment of Israel, and if that's not an admission of guilt of Israel and the Epstein files, I don't fucking know what is. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that as well, Razor. That's just a lot to read out loud.
Clever, creative military forces on the planet are here in Israel because they have to be to survive. So what we're looking at is that Israel is advancing down the road of new weaponry far beyond us, and it would be nice to have a process where we could be partners.
Hold up. Israel is advancing in weapons research and technology far beyond the United States, and the U.S. is paying Israel's entire existence? one of these things is not adding up. If America is paying for Israel to exist and Israel is investing all that money into warfare, then wouldn't Israel be our vassal state? Normally, yes, except Israel has America by the balls through blackmail. So that should be extremely deeply disturbing to everyone with ears and at least 2 brain cells. Have you seen the famous meme about the person who says, if I don't steal your house, someone else will? Yeah, no, we actually watched the clip of the Israeli colonizer who said it. So yeah, no, that's pretty fucked up.
We have one more clip, Jasper. That's a great clip to get your take on because you've done so much work in the space. But let's roll E5 first, more of Senator Lindsey Graham.
Could our soldiers be hit in the region? Absolutely, they could. Can Iran respond if we have an all-out attack? Absolutely, they can. I think the risk associated with that is far less than the risk associated with blinking and pulling the plug and not helping the people as you promised.
So the future of war in Israel, Jasper, you know all about that. Tell us what Lindsey Graham would actually probably agree with you that he's talking about.
Yeah, I saw that clip, and I mean, it was one of these moments of like, I don't know if he could take it back, if he could, or if he just, wants to be saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, there's a number of things he could be talking about. One of them is, the fact that Israel is actually, testing out new weaponry, in many cases, American weapons, that will then, go straight to the American military after it's been tested out there. I think, of course, the U.S., many hawks in the government, including our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, have long wanted war with Iran. Israel is, of course, wants more than anything, or Netanyahu certainly wants more than anything to take out the regime in Iran. And so they're a good sort of proxy to get that war going. But also, I mean, I think it should be said that, like, many people have noted that the genocide in Gaza has sort of, stripped away the last pretenses of a rules-based order. It's shown that, the stronger country can do whatever it wants, not just to Gaza, where, they use October 7th as a pretense, but in Lebanon and in Syria and in the West Bank and anywhere they want. The stronger country can just, go in and dominate with force, as the U.S. has done in Venezuela and, potentially in Cuba. And so I think Lindsey Graham is, he's sort of projecting his fantasies of empire onto this situation. And he's saying that, yes, they're going to help us out with the war on Iran, with, everything we want to do. They're helping test our weapons, but also, like, Israel is setting the new standard. This is how warfare is going to work. This is how empire is going to work going forward. And just watch.
Well, and
which is deeply disturbing on any number of fronts, because Israel is also conducting some of the most inhumane atrocities in warfare. For one, using women and children as living bodies as shields, right? Genocide. Testing weapons that are thermonucleic or something like that. I forget what the term is, but apparently America wanted to test weapons that got so hot that it actually destroyed bodies, like down to the bone. Usually, if you burn a body, bones don't burn to ash unless it hits an extremely high temperature threshold. And evidently, at least 3,000 Palestinians, according to the Epstein files, which is somehow before 2023, mind you, right? Israel tested a weapon that literally evaporated 3,000 Palestinians. These are the kinds of things that are being openly talked and bragged about by Lindsey Graham as he goes to Israel every 2 fucking weeks. And yes, everything Israel does is essentially a war crime.
Speak a little bit to the Trump administration context here as well. I saw Trump made some throwaway comment, I believe it was last week, about like, oh, we don't want to see them taking over the West Bank. But we also know that, of course, one of his top contributors, Miriam Adelson, reportedly gave him some $100 million plus in exchange for, hey, you're gonna let them annex the West Bank. And it reminded me also very much of the many reports of how upset Biden was about.
Which is exactly what's happening. Israel announced that they're annexing the West Bank, and I don't think any American news outlet or official has said a single peep about it.
Netanyahu doing blah, 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 but it never amounts to any sort of action. Do you think there's any possibility that he would see this brazen land grab as a threat to some of the things he wants? I mean, mostly he just wants bragging rights about his quote unquote peace deal and his peace board, et cetera. How do you see those pieces fitting in?
Well, the annexation of the West Bank is even before Trump. It's been done in a way that is deliberately meant to provide plausible deniability to Israel. So they haven't just come out and said we've annexed the West Bank or we have declared sovereignty over the West Bank. They are putting in place all these policies that, like I said, are stripping control away from the military occupation and from the Palestinian Authority and giving it to Israel. Basically to the settlers one step at a time, which amounts to a de facto annexation. But I think that, beyond that, Trump obviously acts in his own self-interest. I don't even think he knows where the West Bank is. I don't think he could point to it on a map. There are two things that could potentially cause him to speak up, which he actually has done in the past. The first one would be if the Abraham Accords or, the normalization deal is threatened. So in 2020, the UAE actually threatened to pull out of normalization if Netanyahu pushed forward an annexation effort that he was making. Trump immediately came out and told Netanyahu he couldn't do it. And obviously it's because it was going to cause him to lose his, big foreign policy achievement, the Abraham Accords from the first term. So far, there's no indication that the UAE is threatening that this time around. Qatar has a lot of these Arab states who are either already normalizing with Israel or who are considering it have issued these completely toothless threats. So I don't see that as a factor right now. The other thing, which I have even less hope for, is that somebody points out to Trump that, I think point 19 in your 20-point peace plan says that the Palestinians have to have a path to statehood, to self-determination. And what they're doing in the West Bank, which would be, in theory, in a parallel universe where the settlement movement was forced out, the West Bank would be the bulk of the Palestinian state in terms of land and population. And if somebody points out to Trump that, all of these new policies in the West Bank are making it completely physically impossible, legally impossible for the Palestinians to have a state, there goes your whole peace plan. And again, it's a legacy play for him. So I think that in theory, he could say, oh, wait a minute, these guys are screwing up my plan. But it doesn't look like that's happening.
Well, final point on that from me, Jasper.
Okay, so we listened a lot more to this video than I thought we were going to. But maybe I'm wrong, because I was under the impression that countries like the UAE would push back. Well, no, he was talking about Israel. Okay, never mind. I still wonder, though, if the United States invades Iran, if the UAE isn't going to push back against Israel, which is a puppet of America or vice versa, would the UAE push back against an invasion of Iran? And it's not looking good about that either. So, in Razor, I do agree with both of the points that you made as well.
All right, so Maz Hussein and I will have a piece over at Drop Site later today. It might be up by the time this show goes up. That shows that the Israeli government installed, alarms and security equipment, surveillance equipment, at Jeffrey Epstein's East 66th Street apartment, that's stretching for years. According to emails that have been released by the Department of Justice in 2016 and 2017 at least, and it looks like for periods that go beyond that, because Ehud Barak was staying so frequently in the apartment. He's the former prime minister of Israel, and former prime ministers are entitled to certain levels of security throughout the rest of their career. Barak would be especially entitled to it because of his time as Minister of Defense and also as a top intelligence official. He was staying for long stretches of time at Jeffrey Epstein's apartment, which was technically owned by Mark Epstein, but effectively controlled by Jeffrey Epstein, Mark Epstein, his brother, that the Israeli consulate, the UN permanent mission for Israel in New York, became responsible for security at this Epstein apartment. They installed different surveillance and security devices in that apartment. You put up, I don't know if we have either of these two elements available, but they go back and forth, and it turns out that basically anybody who wanted to go into the apartment had to have a background check and had to be cleared by the Israeli government. And there was the handler for the apartment even turned over, according to the emails. So like they're going back and forth with, they say, hey, we're going to have some new folks coming in, and a different Israeli government official responds, say, I'm taking over for Rafi. I'm now handling this apartment security. That's the gist of what we can glean, just from these.
Okay, Grim. Love you to death. And if we were just, cooking and listening to politics in the background, I'd play you, buddy. Or if I wanted to go to bed and I wanted to go to sleep listening to a comforting voice talking about the most horrific things on planet Earth, I'd listen to you. But my God, you make it really hard to do this stream. Okay. Effectively, Epstein was being surveilled by Israel, and Israel was actively supporting and surveilling Epstein's activities. Which means that regardless of how you want to paint the Epstein emails and Israel's involvement directly or indirectly, it cannot be argued that Israel did not have an extremely large thumb on the scale of what Epstein did, and that they were absolutely aware of what was going on due to the sheer amount of surveillance that was being conducted, right? Well, Sam, that's only from certain years. It's like, okay, but he's still Mossad. And this has still been going on for decades at this point. So, all I'm getting at is we are seeing more and more clear evidence that Epstein was a Mossad agent, an asset of Israel at the very least, that Israel was directly involved in everything that was happening here, and that it ends up compromising hundreds, if not thousands, of the most powerful and influential people on planet Earth. And yet the only country that seems uninterested in prosecution is the United States of America. And for some reason, all of the protests that I am seeing on my feed are against ICE and against individual members, not including the president, not including the administration, and not including a total blanket prosecution and arrest of everyone in the list. Just individuals. Like in Columbus, there's going to be a protest against Les Wexner. Necessary, great, fantastic, but what about the ongoing protests about the fact that Trump is in there 38,000 times and that every single member of the administration is in the files? It's like it's like we have a bowl of chicken and we ate it, and now we need to clean out the bowl, and instead of cleaning out the bowl, we're just going to leave it on the table to fester and rot and mold? Like, at some point, we're going to have to clean the bowl. So, all right, a little bit of good news.
Right-wing journalist Tucker Carlson and his staff were reportedly detained in Israel. Carlson, a former Fox News host, was in Tel Aviv to interview U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee. He said men who identified themselves as airport security took their passports and pulled his executive producer into a side room. Carlson said they demanded to know what they discussed with Ambassador Huckabee, calling the encounter bizarre. Carlson has been a vocal critic of Israel in recent years, calling out its military involvement in Gaza.
So, even right-wing conspiracy theorists and talking heads can get targeted by Israel if you criticize Israel. Which is crazy because fuck Israel is literally is the first thing you see on this screen. Like when you come to my channel, like if it's on your phone, in fact, let me pull it up on my phone. Because I think most people watch Twitch from their phones. Not everybody has a fancy computer monitor. Okay. So here's my phone. And right there it shows fuck Israel, free Palestine, Worldwide Wednesdays, and then it goes into the rest of the whatchamacallit. Which might not be good advertising and marketing on my side of things. I'm not claiming that I'm good at that. But like my channel has had fuck Israel in the title for gosh, how long ago did I start doing that? Probably since last April. Israel hasn't done a single thing against me. No malicious arguments, not even a fake text message like the one that I got from a fake ICE agent. And I still have it, too. This is Homeland Security investigation. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. First, it's, the text is this Sam Ronan? And then me responding, who is this? And then, this is Homeland Security investigations. This is a warning regarding your threats to ICE. Threatening federal law enforcement could constitute violations of 18 U.S.C. 115, and you could face federal penalties. And then I emoji reacted with the laughing face. I'm actually kind of surprised, you know, Israel hasn't tried to do something like that about me, but, you know, it is what it is. Right, Razor, you're absolutely right. Anything to distract from the reality. Okay. Actually, let's do some, let's do some, and some. I'll be right back. Is the one that I think sounds the most badass. My mic shouldn't be off. It is Mao. That song was called "The Sun Is Reddest" and Chairman Mao is Dearest. This is the exact kind of music you would expect to see in a military movie. Like, it doesn't matter if it's America or Russia or China. This music is, yes, these are soldiers getting ready to go fight the war. This is a problem. I probably just lost all of our viewers by being goofy. I apologize. That cracks me up. I'm sorry. It really does. Okay. On a serious note, we are China protest now. China Lunar New Year. Oh, that's true. It is the new year, isn't it? So, is there anything about a new year on this? That's the same Chairman Mao song. And what a fucking title, too. Like, guys, I can't make this up. The sun is reddest, Chairman Mao is dearest. The fact that Donald Trump didn't create a song for something like that for himself. Donald Trump is dearest, you know, MAGA is reddest, President Trump is dearest. Like, I could literally see him making a song like that, and then it's Kid Rock or something singing it. Oh, man. All right. I'm sorry. All right. Syria is facing a drought and a pestilent invasion from Zionism.
Says he is a dying breed. He is battling a drought, along with thousands of other farmers in the Yarmouk Basin, which could make their way of life a thing of the past.
The low water levels in the Abdeen Dam is making it impossible to work. The current levels are only around 500 cubic meters of water. It's not enough to water the crops, let alone the surrounding land. So far, everything is a loss, including supplies, workers, the water we are tracking in, and the effort we are making. If Abdeen Dam is not filled and the farmland is not watered, then we lose the entire crop.
Nestled between Jordan and the occupied Golan Heights, the Yarmouk Basin is supposed to be an oasis of green. But the Abdeen Dam tells a different story. What should be 7 million cubic meters of water has now been reduced to just a few puddles. And the farmers that are planting farmland here in the Quaya region say that if this dam is not filled, they're afraid their livelihoods are going to dry up, just like the dam has.
Well, do we know what's going on with the dam?
Omar Al-Omar is Quaya's Mukhtar, or village head. He says the farmers are the drought's biggest victims.
Farmers are spending a lot of money to plant and take care of the land, but they have limited resources. The crops are being sold for cheap in the local market, and there are limited options for exporting the crops to international markets.
At the vegetable wholesaler inside the village, Muhammad Hamdan is sending his produce to Damascus for sale. Hamdan says he used to grow 5 tons of zucchini on his hectare of land every 2 days. Now, it's producing only half a ton.
I should be able to grow more than this. The fertilizer we're using is low quality. We're at the beginning of the season and it's the start of Ramadan, so the price of zucchini is up. But I don't know how things will look going forward. We're purchasing water from tankers and it is expensive. Each tanker is 100,000 Syrian pounds. We water only 5% of a hectare with it. If we used to plant 3 or 4 hectares, now we're planting only 1. If you want to plant a large piece of land, you need at least 10 tankers of water every other day.
Locals say they need the government to open upstream dams to fill Abdeen Dam as soon as possible. But unless that happens soon, their way of life may die along with their crops. Obayda Hito, Al Jazeera, Daraa.
I mean, my God, they're actually using... I mean, that right there is about 12,000 years of agriculture. What is happening right there is about 12,000 years of agriculture. And it is being destroyed by... Well, and it makes you wonder, like, what is the cause? Okay, so upstream dams are not releasing water to the other dam that's in their land because their land is near the Golan Heights, which is occupied by Israel. So, in essence, Syria is capitulating land to Israel that isn't actively being invaded or attacked by Israel because of the fear of Israel encroachment. Like, that just goes to show how absolutely batshit bonkers Israel is to the region. Oh, great. It's also al-Assad that's part of the problem. Wonderful. He set up headquarters to sell Captagon to other countries and smuggle it legally. Some shipments even reached Muslim countries like Saudi Arabia and others. He is truly a criminal and a tyrant to his people. Well, there we have it. So it's not Israel. It's the former head of Al-Qaeda, who is now the president of Syria. Unfucking believable. Like, not only do we have criminals and traitors in charge here in the United States and Europe, but like, yeah, let's just throw in the Middle East as well, because why not? Let's just have global fascism. And that's true. We do have global fascism. The Prime Minister of fucking Japan is going out of her way to demonize immigrants and subjugate her people as well. She is one of the most right-wing leaders in Japanese history since Emperor Hirohito from World War II. Well, we're actually going to get through all of the videos, but we have about an hour to go. So Bashar al-Assad is the former president of Syria. Now they have the former terrorist. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, my bad. So the former terrorist is currently in charge. Oh, Assad was the one that was assassinated by Obama that caused the Syrian civil war. No, you're right. I'm sorry. Mea culpa. I should have recognized that. Again, don't confuse me. I'm too tired. Okay. Well, let's cover Bangladesh because this could be potentially good news. Hopefully.
In a day full of symbolism and ceremony.
Is YouTube struggling? I can't imagine.
Bangladesh has entered a new political era. Tariq Rahman, the new Prime Minister, took his oath of office along with 49 members of his cabinet. The government has pledged to focus on economic stability, the rule of law, and strengthening public institutions.
I think if you see the characterization of all the members of the cabinet ministers, I think you can see each one of them has experience in in their own subject. So I feel that this is a collection of experienced people who experience, and I think it will be good for the country.
Outside the parliament, large crowds gathered and security was tight, but the mood was mix of relief and expectation.
We want to see accountable democracy. We want to see transparency. We want to see rule of law. We want to see justice.
A country free from conflict, where party lines, faith and differences no longer divide us, where the nation stands united with shared purpose and hope.
Critics on social media have already highlighted the lack of women and youth representation in the cabinet.
Yeah, you know, I was kind of wondering that myself. There's no women in that cabinet. And none of the people standing around him were women. And this is literally the first woman that we have seen on screen. Like, what?
Shama Obed is one of the just 3 women ministers.
My personal opinion, I would have been much happier if there were more women in the parliament. But I think we are working on it, and hopefully in the future we'll have more women representatives directly elected from their constituencies.
The formalities are over, the stage is quiet, and a new government steps in. While across Bangladesh, people watch and hope this moment will bring lasting democracy, strong leadership, and good governance. For many citizens, especially younger voters, this is a moment of hope, tempered by caution as they watch and wait to see if...
Well, this is the other thing, right? Okay, so young voters basically overthrew Bangladesh, forcing resignations and forcing new elections, and then they still elect Tio, like Abuelo, like what? I don't understand why a youth isn't in charge. Like, I don't know what the Bangladeshi constitution stipulates for age limits or whatever, but I am surprised it's not somebody younger and not somebody significantly more progressive, given everything that led up to this moment. So, I mean, there is that. I hope Israel is removed from our Arab region because they truly do not want any peace or coexistence. That is absolutely true. The people of Bangladesh seem to be happy about this new PM. I mean, they said it was fairly muted, so it's not the kind of support that you would expect after a pseudo-revolution or revolution. From my point of view, since I live in Saudi Arabia, everyone should be given equal opportunities, whether men or women. As long as they possess the competence, they should not be prevented, as they are the ones who make up society. Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, ideally, that is how the world would work universally, but that is not how it works universally, because somehow patriarchy has infested every corner of society and every culture and every nation, and getting rid of patriarchy, as well as capitalism, is going to be quite difficult unless people become very comfortable with a very specific tool invented in 1789. So, well, we didn't really get to talk about... let's go back to the EU real quick.
Now, the BBC has...
I'm going to try and be a good creator and spread out the remaining videos instead of ending early.
Let's learn that Keir Starmer is considering making a significant increase in UK defence spending. The Prime Minister is looking at meeting an existing spending target earlier than planned at a potential cost of billions of pounds. It's thought the Prime Minister is considering meeting the 3% ambition potentially by the end of this Parliament. Well, let's speak live on the programme to the Labour peer, Lord West of Spithead, former Commander-in-Chief of the Royal Navy, and thank you so much for being here with us. No secret that you are among those pushing for greater military spending, but where and what? Just explain.
Well, I think, first of all, I would say that the world is more dangerous now than any stage in my 60 years on the active list in the Navy. You could argue that...
Okay, what is it with all of these British folks on the BBC saying they're like 60 years old and this guy looks like he's 80? Or like having, like, just, I don't know. Is England okay? If that man is 60, yikes. I mean, what else to really say, right?
Cold War, at times it was more dangerous. But the world is very much more uncertain. And it's quite clear that we're in a world now where might is right. And talking softly and walking with a big stick is the way of doing things. The trouble is, we used to be able to do that very well in this country, but now, rather than a big stick, we've got a matchstick because there have been successive cuts for our military over certainly the last 15 years, but actually longer than that. Our military now is in a parlous state.
So where should extra money, if there was to be extra money, go to?
Again, with this whole fear-mongering shit, we used to be great. We used to have strength and power. We used to be able to lead with a big stick. I'm quoting Theodore Roosevelt, the U.S. president. Golly gee willikers. Chip chip cheerio. Even though we've lost our military funding over the past 15 years, you know what we should be doing with our tax dollars is investing more in the military. Bully, 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 bully. Like, oh shit. Whoops. Okay. If the only domestic policy that you can come up with, and foreign policy for that matter, is stronger military, then you have no fucking clue what governance is, right? More pew pew equal better country good. No. But country threatened by other country need more pew pew. Guys, having a strong military is important. I'm not arguing that. I'm not. But if your solution to international diplomacy is we need bigger guns because they have bigger guns, that's called stockpiling of weapons. It's called arms race. It's called escalation. And as we have seen in every other point of history, whenever countries gather weapons and spread fear and aggression and nationalism, war inevitably breaks out. And guess what's not good for an economy or for the longevity of a people? War. But Sam, war generates profits and all this, that, and the other for countries all the time. It's what got us out of the Great Depression. Cool. Ask Europe how they feel about World War II and how many years it took for them to rebuild. I mean, there are still parts of the world that have mines and bombs that are unexploded ordnance from World War II, and not just in Europe. So, all I'm getting at is, yes, military strong, good. But military strong, need more strong military good is not how that works, okay? If, and hear me out, the UK invested in its social programs like healthcare and education, you wouldn't need as big of a military because you could be focusing on developing technology, trade, and infrastructure, which would set you above any country that would want to attack you. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. If you are more technologically and economically advanced than a military superpower, you can crush them. If they raise their saber at you, right? It's why a bunch of illiterate, nasty, diseased colonists from England, who were also religious fanatics, were able to destroy over 100 million indigenous tribes on the entire North American continent with black powder muskets and cannons. The Native Americans, the indigenous peoples of the Americas, of the North American continent, outnumbered the colonists hundreds to one when we were colonists. And I think it was still 2 or 3 to 1 during the initial phases of Manifest Destiny. And the only reason why we were not massacred is because these tribes were too busy massacring each other because they didn't actually view us as a threat. Until we were a threat, and then we used our guns and overcame their weapons and technology. So what I'm getting at is indigenous peoples prevented the Vikings and other explorers from breaking land whatsoever, breaking ground on the North American continent for about 1,000 years. 500 years longer than when Christopher Columbus discovered America, or rather, was lost at sea. And it wasn't until another 200-300 years after that, rampant disease and a proxy war that allowed us to establish a foothold on the continent, that we actually started fighting back. After tens of millions of indigenous people died from disease, from a bubonic plague equivalent. So all I'm saying is, all of this emphasis on a stronger, more robust military breeds the desire to use that military and breeds propaganda to justify using that military, to then convince and manufacture the consent of the people to utilize that military. It's why America has been at war for 99% of our nation's history. And that needs to fucking stop. And I get this is the UK, but like this needs to stop globally. And we need to get hawks out of office. We need to, like, seriously, like, there is no reason for war. If we could invest and develop and perfect space travel, you do realize there are hundreds of moons. Is it hundreds? Because I feel like we discover a new moon around Jupiter every other Tuesday. Whatever. There are at least 100 moons in our solar system. There is an entire planet that is just a carbon wasteland. There is an entire asteroid belt that we could easily land on, because the asteroids, like, say this distance is 100,000 miles, like this gap right here, we could land on these asteroids that are 100,000 miles apart with no risk. And we could mine minerals from asteroids, right? We could be doing literally anything else under the sun, pun not intended, than waging war over the finite resources on planet Earth. And we are literally not doing that. It's like someone telling you that killing the indigenous people in a country is bad and disgusting while they themselves are killing the indigenous people. That's exactly what's happening now. No, I mean, you're 100% correct. So, and it just goes to show that, like, we have the dumbest people in charge of things. And we have the most ruthless and disingenuous people in charge of everything with no morals or no sense of decency whatsoever. Just exploitation and profits. It's disgusting. We're not going to continue this video because I'm not going to promote warmongering. We will, however, make fun of AOC.
So in addition to Marco Rubio, there were some noteworthy comments in Munich from 2028 Democratic contenders. The one who got the most attention probably was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Let's go ahead and take a listen to a bit of what she had to say.
First and foremost, I think we need to revisit our commitments to international aid, not just USAID, but the dozens of global compacts that this current Secretary of State and President Trump have withdrawn from. They are looking to withdraw the United States from the entire world so that we can turn into an age of authoritarians that can carve out the world where Donald Trump can command the Western Hemisphere and Latin America as his personal sandbox, where Putin can saber rattle around Europe and try to bully around our own allies there, and for essentially authoritarians to have their own geographic domains. And it actually is the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It is our global alliances that can be a hard stop against authoritarian consolidation of power,
Okay. I'm gonna I'm going to stop her right there because, for one, the bobblehead. Do I have a microphone? I thought I did have a microphone around here. I guess not. Suffice to say, she's talking about every problem in the world except for Israel, for one. For two, she's not very concisely talking about Russia. And again, why are you AOC, I think I'm older than AOC. Like, she's not from the Cold War era. 36. Wait, what? AOC is older than me? Are you kidding? What? Poppycock. Bully. Ah. Okay. So, hold on. AOC is Latina, right? She's Latina, right? In Latin American culture, is it like in Korean and Japanese culture that you can refer to older people that are still considered your peers in a casual way as uncle or big brother? Is that true? So, like, if I get elected into Congress, when I get elected into Congress, if I walk up to AOC and say, hola tia, I look forward to working with you. Is she gonna lose her mind on me because she's a month older than me? Oh shit. Okay. Doña, call her Doña. Hola Doña, how's it going? Oh my god. Okay. Also, and I'm not saying I wouldn't be nervous in my first international appearance, but then again, I was also, for the first time, thrown in front of thousands of people on the debate stage when I ran for DNC chair, and I did well with that. So I get you that she might be nervous, is what I'm getting at. But, like, nothing she is saying is concise, and she's bringing up the Cold War era fear-mongering of Russia. And she keeps bringing up authoritarianism and how our global international alliances and trade groups and this, that, and the other would prevent that, when clearly they didn't, considering it's not just America that's authoritarian. Italy is literally re-engaging fascism. Isn't the the PM of Italy, like, calling herself a fascist? Isn't she literally, like, giving herself that moniker? You got Macron, who is being protested every other Tuesday for being a bastard, somehow not being removed from office despite the fact the French keep protesting. You've got Merz or something from Germany, their prime minister, talking about how Deutschland wird der größten Macht, den Reich des Welt has jeder gesehen. Like, bro, that is literally what Hitler said. We will make the greatest army the world has ever seen. And he is Merz. Okay, so at least I'm remembering some names, right? So you basically have all of these European leaders who are going full fascist, full war hawk, right? Even the UK minister is like, nope, you're pro-Palestinian, you're a terrorist now. And then never mind Milei in Argentina, never mind the El Salvadorian president, never mind the Syrian president, former Al-Qaeda terrorist leader, right? Like, and we have agreements with those guys. Maduro wasn't an authoritarian, but we attacked him and nobody batted an eyelash. So I'm just saying, like, sure, AOC, let's go.
Particularly in the installation of regional puppet governments in a so-called rules-based order. The rules for whom? Because for all too long, the rules only applied to the United States, Europe, its allies, and we would carve out exceptions for the global south. And I think that when you have a rules-based order where you carve out exceptions to our values, exceptions to our rules, eventually the exceptions become the rules. And I think that, to your original point, over the last 5 years, we've seen such a breaking and such a fraying of these alleged Western values that people wonder if it ever existed in the first place. So I don't know if it's necessarily that we are in a post-rules-based order. I think it's possible that we were in a pre-rules-based order. And we have an opportunity to explore what a world would look like if we upheld democracy, human rights, trade that actually centers working class people instead of accruing overwhelmingly the benefits of trade to the wealthiest. But if we reoriented a new era that could actually help people and show how foreign policy and healthy foreign policy can show up and help them in their lives.
So,
hold on a second. Does AOC have a lisp? Have I never listened to this woman talk before and did not realize she has a lisp? Am I like, and I'm not judging her. I'm genuinely shocked. I thought that would have been brought up. Also, yes, she does say a lot and says nothing. I was actually trying to listen to see if she was ever going to get to her point. A rules-based, you know what it was giving to me? It was giving, as the youth say, it was giving, it's totally fetch. I just couldn't get away from, like, if a Valley girl or a college freshman in their first poli-sci class had their first political debate and they were talking about ideas without actually knowing how to nuance those ideas. Like, for instance, say the idea was, well, okay, rules-based society. Well, this is exactly what she said, right? Is, if we make exceptions for others to sacrifice our values on this rules-based society in these rules-based global order, then we end up making those exceptions the norm. And then what do we have? Which brings us to, maybe we're in the pre-rules-based order stage of society, and how do we get there? First of all, what is rules-based society? Second of all, what are the exceptions to those values? And what values are you even discussing? Right? Because if we're talking about rules-based society in which the United Nations is the international authority of rules that all nations shall abide by, and these are the ethics, morals, and values that unite these nations under the body of the UN, then say that. Because by that metric, we have a rules-based society with an established base of values and international laws to enforce them and an international body to enforce them. But we only enforce them against the global south when it's convenient, or our enemies when it's convenient, or Russia, because fuck Russia, I guess. So you're going to talk about a rules-based society and not mention the one institution that actually is a global rules-based institution? I don't know, man. She reminded me of me in high school when I didn't read the book and had to do a book report for that class. Just bullshitting my way through. Honestly, I feel like you would have done a better job, just to be fair. All of that for the American people. Let's make America great again. You're supposed to believe that, or you will become an illegal immigrant in America. Yeah. I mean, I don't know, man. I guess Crystal is about to tear her into her as well.
There's a lot to unpack there. I mean, first of all, on the content, what she lays out there is basically what she says Trans-Pacific Partnership, which are, of course, the old trade deals. She clarified on Twitter she meant to say transatlantic alliances. But what she's describing there is effectively like a neocon
that
approach.
Is the neocon
of like,
worldview.
We need to spread democracy around the world, and we're going to use our strength and our partnerships in this alliance to make sure that, we're standing up to authoritarians all over the world. And so, I don't agree with that foreign policy direction. I'm largely ideologically aligned with AOC on many domestic policy issues, but this is straight out of like standard Democratic Party establishment blob playbook. So there's that. There's the substance of it that I object to. And then I watched her entire commentary here. I watched all the, the panels she did, et cetera. And I will just say from a presentation perspective, she's so clearly very uncomfortable.
She's out of her element.
You know what happened?
Okay. I called that, right? It wasn't just me. They're saying it too. She wasn't ready, right? She just wasn't ready for it. Maybe she thought she was ready, but then she was in the room with all the important people in foreign land, and then there was cameras, and she was talking. Like, I don't know, man. If you're gonna walk around with a big stick, then you better swing it around, is all I'm saying, right? If you're going in there thinking you're packing some heat, and instead you're like, I have a mighty weapon, you're not going to be taken seriously. And that's what I think a lot of people's issues with AOC has been, is that when push comes to shove, she doesn't have the gravitas to stand. Does that make sense? She might have very good policy. She might have very good presence in certain areas that favor her. But if AOC is not the center, or isn't in a position where her ferocity can benefit her, right? If she were dropped in the Republican convention debates as the only Democratic invitee for the presidential 2028 primaries, right? If it was all of MAGA and AOC dropped in there as the only DNC invitee, she would be out of her element and she would have the same issue. I think that's her problem. She thrives in her environment, but she hasn't been tested outside of her comfort zone. And her environment is not the international community. Her whole shtick has been woman, Latina, of the people, right? That has been her entire thing since she got into Congress. So the second she steps out of that, she just loses all of her elegance, her eloquence, her gravitas that she otherwise brings. Because I'm fairly certain that when she speaks publicly, she doesn't have a list, for one, and for two, when she's with Bernie Sanders, she's roaring with the crowd. She's stirring up the crowd. Like, I believe she has charisma and the ability to reach people, but when it's on her terms. And I think at the very least, her getting it out of her system now gives her a better opportunity to succeed later if she should choose to run for president. But yeah, no, she definitely felt really out of her comfort zone. She may have ruined her chances for 2028. I don't think so. I mean, 2 years is plenty of time to recover, but I mean, I wouldn't be putting her at the top of the polls after this, that's for sure. I retweeted Billie Eilish's words when she said no one is illegal in a stolen country. She is right. How can there be an illegal immigrant when you originally stole that land? I mean, you know. Let's see. I don't think she's a good speaker. I told you that months ago. I don't hate AOC, but she sounds insincere. True. She sounds insincere to you and me, political junkies, who are actually about that life, right? Who are ready to go. But to normies, to people who aren't politically engaged or active or well-versed, she looks like Che Guevara, but girl. So, but now that she was in Munich, people are seeing, wait a minute, where did the beret go? So that's all I'm saying. All right, let's continue on.
Happened here. Her staff is like, if you want to be in position to run for president, you need to do this. You need to build out like your foreign policy chops. So we're going to send you to this conference. And it did not go well. It has the feel to me of someone who, hasn't fully fleshed out their own worldview. So they've received briefings.
Yeah, that's also, you know what? That's kind of true too. Now that she says that, Crystal, right? That's Crystal. So and I know I'm just pausing a woman to be a white man to speaking over her so I can give my own opinion before letting her continue to talk. So I do apologize for that. But that's what I was trying to enunciate. Or no, that's not the right word. That's what I was trying to convey. Is that AOC didn't seem like she had it figured out yet. I said comfort and I said all these other things. But what Crystal just said, that is precisely correct. That she hasn't fleshed it out. Which is crazy because AOC has been in Congress since what, 2016, 2018? Is her Wikipedia still up? It is. She has been in office. So January 3rd, 2019. So she's been in office for 7 years now. And you don't have a foreign policy platform? Like, that is a little weird. I'm not going to lie. Yeah, how is her foreign policy not fleshed out by now? Like, that is very, Trump becoming a German immigrant and getting deported by ICE. I mean, at the rate things are going.
They've got, a binder of prep materials, and they're trying to memorize the notes of what that said versus being nimble enough in their ideology to respond to the questions that are being asked. And that's how you make a slip up. Like, I don't want to read too much into it, but that's how you make a slip up, like saying Trans-Pacific Partnership rather than Transatlantic Alliance, because rather than articulating your worldview, you're trying to remember what you memorized. So she was very shaky. She was totally out of her element and very uncomfortable up there the whole time.
Well, I'll give you, the TPP line wouldn't matter if it wasn't clearly indicative of a bigger problem. So let me read this exchange on Taiwan. Questioned about the United States should send troops to defend Taiwan. AOC roughly stalled for 20 seconds before delivering this response. I think that this is such a, I think that this is a, this is of course a very long-standing policy of the United States. What are we doing here? Yeah. It's like, I don't want to say yes. I don't want to say no. Now, listen, Donald Trump also got elected by being a bumbling moron, all right? So, like, on foreign policy. So let's say where the bar is. Yeah. This was my greatest fear about Trump, is that he would make popular, again, the diminishing... Look, there was, I think, a real reckoning after Biden and a lot of the support for Ukraine, where people saw that the wool had been pulled from in front of their eyes. Because at first everyone was like, oh, I'll pay more gas to free Ukraine. And after 2 years, you're like, well, we're $100 billion into this thing. My gas prices are high. The Eastern Donbass isn't all that important to me. Should we really be the world's policeman? Well, what are the circumstances which led to the invasion of Ukraine? Do we really have an interest in spreading democracy around the world? What's our track record on spreading democracy around the world? Trump, being so ham-handed, in my opinion, has actually made this type of politics more popular than ever before, purely by being oppositional. But what true leftists have always understood is that there is an actual critique of NATO and all of this, which in some cases is aligned with Trump. Now, it doesn't mean you buy into it.
So hold on a second. This is Sager, right? Sager, isn't he supposed to be the conservative pundit? So what, is he the conservative pundit that just happens to be well-versed on leftist ideology? Because that sounded like something I would say. What? Are we... Is he coming to the dark side? The dark leftism being the dark side. Here's the thing about leftists. Leftists hate fascists, but not as much as they hate other leftists. And it's insane because all leftists basically want the same thing, right? Here's the Overton window, center. Here's fascism, here's right wing. Here's the center, here's the left, and here's, like, extreme left. Leftists are somewhere from here to here. But definitely left of center. And the ones that want Star Trek Utopia will fight to death the people who are just like, hey, can we just stop at universal programs? Bruh. We are arguing about the semantics of Star Trek Utopian over here and violating each other when there are literal fascists, pedophiles in power, trying to murder every poor person because they're poor, without any consideration to the fact that if poor people are gone, who's going to do all the jobs? Right? So, I mean, anyway. So, I'm sorry, when you said is he coming to the dark side? Are you saying he's converting to the dark side? I missed that, I'm sorry. I think he's coming around on many issues. He is always anti-war, so we already had something in common with him. I think he's... Oh, excuse me. Even for universal health care, if I remember correctly. He was pro-ICE before, but he seems to be turning around. I think he is still very pro-law and order. Yeah, but I can live with pro-law and order, right? Because people want safety and security. I can buy... I'm not against public safety, but... like, maybe not have domestic terrorists and racists and neo-Nazis with guns and badges be in charge of it. Crazy thought.
Would wholesale, you have much more of an internationalist humanitarian vision. See many of our debates on Gaza now, for example.
Yeah.
Where can be differences, but that doesn't mean that the critique specifically around restraint and the acknowledgement of U.S. power being overextended, bad for them, bad for us, bad for everybody involved.
And you know, here's the other thing. He's a political commentator. He's a pundit. He is a person who is supposed to be well-versed on policy, right? Right. So am I. So is Anna. Arguably, Anna is more knowledgeable than I am on most topics. I mean, let's be honest. But I'm well-versed enough to be able to hold my own and discuss things, and I'm just trying to get candid. Well, I'm trying to get elected, but in the process of getting elected, damn it. Whereas AOC has been in office for going on 8 years now, and she isn't able to talk about politics, foreign policy, at the very least, at the same level? It makes me kind of wonder, how well-versed is she on domestic policy, right? Like, if she was in a debate, and she was being challenged on her beliefs and values, which are... oh my God, why have I failed the English language right now? Ostensibly, Jesus. Her domestic policy views and values are ostensibly the same as mine, and I can argue against and for universal health care because I have to know what the counterpoints are to universal health care to defend it, right? Would AOC be able to handle being challenged? And I'm beginning to think the answer is no, because for the most part, AOC has never been challenged. She has fought back, and she has been in places that are beneficial to her, but I don't think she's actually been rhetorically or ideologically challenged. Apparently, I need a 6-month vacation. Is she paying attention? And we've heard all of the right-wing points, yeah. We've heard them repeatedly this year especially. Him and Crystal almost went on separate ways because he was against the George Floyd protests. And Crystal was disgusted. Yeah, fair enough. She also argues on Twitter, you can look stuff up before replying on Twitter. Yeah, I mean, that's true too. You absolutely can do that. Most of us don't, though. All right.
He has clearly just not thought about it very much. And this is the biggest danger for foreign policy. And I've seen this time and time again. You know, George W. Bush, for example, he was a lot like this. And I mean, this sounds crazy to say. He was the Texas governor, which is a fake job. And I'm telling you that as someone who's born from Texas. The Texas governor literally doesn't do anything. He did nothing. His entire foreign policy worldview was colored in by his father. He ran on being a restrainer. Actually, in the year 2000, you can go and read, we're not going to be the world's policeman, etc. 9/11 happens. What happened? The entire apparatus which was in his chain are the people who took over, and he became convinced to be a neocon. This is the problem for AOC. She just clearly, this is your brain on New York Times. Like, that's how I would describe it. She has not thought very deeply around the foreign policy question.
Yeah.
Let's compare her to a Ro Khanna. I mean, good Lord, it's a polar opposite. I mean, he probably is the only one who has a defined vision, which was updated also, I think, from Gaza. He said, okay, very clearly, we have to see this. He's pro-Ukraine, which I have my own issues with, but he's somebody who has thought about these questions, has thought independently, has read a lot. I don't think he would confuse TPP. I think on the Taiwan question, he would probably be able to give a decent enough answer where it's like, well, we're going to make sure that doesn't happen. We have to balance great power competition and all of that with China. It's not just about command of the facts. It's about what's your actual worldview. To me, this seems very colored in by the Democratic Party establishment. And this is a big danger for everybody because if anything is the truth, what we have learned over the years is that when you vote for president in our current imperial system, you are going to get maybe 2% domestically of what you want, but 100% is in the control of the president for foreign policy. It's probably the most important question that we have to answer. And look, I mean, it's been a miserable failure.
You know, and as I just spent all this time talking about how I'm more well-versed in politics and policy than AOC, thinking about the context of what he just said, a president can maybe achieve 2% of their domestic policy, but they can achieve 100% of their foreign policy. It's crazy because you would think it would be the opposite, right? You'd be able to achieve far more domestic than you could foreign. But realistically, there are far more powers at the president's disposal to engage in international relationships, diplomacy, trade, or conflict. Because, yes, conflict requires congressional approval. Pretty much everything else doesn't. I mean, yes, the tariffs notwithstanding and things like that, but diplomatic relationships, that's your Secretary of State. Trade agreements, also your Secretary of State with approval from Congress. But even limited military conflict, constitutionally, is still under the purview of the president. Very, very limited. War, Congress, right? In little military tete-a-tetes, definitely within the president's purview, right? Because you have to be able to react quickly if you're attacked or if there's a situation that arises. And of course, with the war powers after 9/11 and the global war on terror, I mean, the president can effectively wage a small-scale war for what, 120 days, 90 days or something like that, before Congress ever needs to be involved. Now, true, in an actual invasion of another country, a formal declaration of war, that's still supposed to be Congress, but hey, if they're colluding, then what difference does it fucking make, right? So it's to have it laid out so plainly, to say that the president can pretty much implement their entire foreign policy is, that's pretty sobering, actually. Right, and now, right, the president makes unilateral decisions. The POTUS has to do whatever he or she wants abroad, more or less. Yeah, pretty much.
Failure here under Donald Trump, even though I thought there were a lot of promising signs. People who had spoke very much more articulately than AOC, let's say at Munich, ended up not having all that much influence or being co-opted. But so I'm not saying that even just speaking coherently will lead to necessarily good things, but we should really think deeply about this question if we're going to, when we elect a new president.
I absolutely agree. And I kind of reject, I was going to say, I don't know how much it matters electorally, but I kind of reject this view that Americans don't really vote on foreign policy. I don't think that's true. I mean, we saw numerous elections that turned on the question of where were you on the Iraq War. Mm-hmm. Trump, I think, benefited very much from at least positioning himself as an Iraq War critic. Whether he was one from the jump or not is another matter. In the previous election, the choice between Trump and Kamala Harris, we, in our own focus group, talked to people who I was personally, as someone who thought that Gaza mattered a lot, I was personally surprised by how many people cited war and Gaza specifically as a reason why they voted for Trump or didn't vote at all. And, you can say they were foolish. certainly think there were plenty of reasons to believe that it would not go well with him as president, but they were looking at what was being done under a Biden-Harris administration. We're like, we do not support this. So it is also an area where, look, we've never had a woman president. We've never had a Latina president. You have to ask people to imagine you in that role. And part of that is being able to, handle yourself in these settings, come across as very confident in your assertions. She was on this panel with, who is this guy? He's like the ambassador. He's not an impressive person, but he's like very confident. Yeah. He's up there saying his thing, touting Trump's quote unquote accomplishments, blah, blah, blah. And to see her diminished next to that guy, I don't know. It was very disappointing to me. It also reminded me of when she first got elected, she got asked a question about Israel-Palestine.
I remember this. Yeah.
And the answer was kind of a mess. And she clearly knew, okay, there's some things I'm not supposed to say, but I don't know what those things are. And it was very forgivable at the moment, because here she's been an organizer and a bartender, and she's, runs for Congress, and this isn't something that she's really steeped in. So I think, okay, I get it. You are coming in there as a representative of the people. This isn't an area that you've studied and explored, and you now have the opportunity to as a member of Congress. But not only with her presentation, but also with the way she's continued to be really twisted into knots over what she wants to say and how she wants to vote on Israel and Palestine. It's emblematic of the fact that some of that work has been done to really come to a fully fleshed out foreign policy worldview, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And that, to me, really came across in this presentation.
That was 7 years ago. You can forgive some. This is your job. You have nothing else to do.
Yeah.
This is literally your job. You want to run for president, and this is what you're doing. Let me, return to...
Okay. Granted, that's U.S. policy, so we probably shouldn't have been wasting that much time on this. I thought there would be more discussion about Munich, to be honest, but my bad. And we kind of lost some of the audience on it too. Sorry. I'm not a great content creator. I'm a great politician. Damn it. Terrible campaigner. Great politician. When I represent you, you'll be ecstatic you got me into office, but I suck at marketing. I really... Oh, wait. Like, share, and subscribe. All right. Let's see if we can discuss this for the rest of the stream.
You've chosen a grim motto for this conference, under distraction. And it probably means that the international order based on rights and rules is currently being destroyed.
Oh, wait. Is that why a world of rules and order, is that what she was using? Is that why? Because German Chancellor Friedrich Merz was saying it? Fair enough.
But I'm afraid we have to put it in even harsher terms. This order, as flawed as it has been even in its heyday, no longer exists.
Joining us right now is Democratic Senator Jeanne Shaheen, who's in Munich as well. She's the top Democrat on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee.
I want to know what her campaign was like. Vote Jeanne Shaheen for Senatorine. Like, I bet she had some sick, kick-ass, quotes for her campaign. I bet she killed it in her campaign.
Thanks for coming in, Senator. What are you hearing while on the ground from European leaders, and what is the message you're bringing to them?
Well, we have a very large bipartisan delegation from the United States Congress, mostly senators, but we have a number of House members as well. And we are here to reaffirm the importance of the transatlantic alliance, the importance of our European partners, and the importance of NATO. And Chancellor Merz...
See, that's the answer that AOC should have given. And Jeanne Shaheen nailed it. She was like, we need to talk about NATO. We need to talk about our trade relations. Although I think she actually said transatlantic. Doesn't matter. She nailed it. She was like, I am Senator Jeanne Shaheen. We have senators and we have a couple of congressmen. And we are here to deliver.
focused on the importance of NATO, not just to European security, but also to American security. And that's a message that all of us understand very clearly.
Well, evidently not, because AOC struggled with that one. Okay. So, once again, we got a little blurb from the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz. Friedrich, we will make the largest army the world has ever seen. Merz. And now we're back to U.S. politics because Americans were there.
From what you're hearing, that's the message you're bringing, but what are you hearing from other European allies? Are they nervous? Are they scared? Do they trust the United States will be there if they need it?
Well, clearly, the president's rhetoric around Greenland and Denmark has had an impact. And again,
that was a very diplomatic answer, Jean Shaheen.
One of the reasons.
Honestly, okay, I'm going to make a great congressman, all right? I am going to be an amazing congressman, but they are going to hate me for more than one reason. Not just my politics and my rhetoric or the fact that I'm going to be a rabble-rouser, but I'm not going to be able to stop myself if I meet her. I'm going to be like, Jean Shaheen, let's go. And she's going to be like, who the fuck is this poor piece of shit talking to me like I am an equal? How dare this peasant address me so? And I'm going to be like, Jean, buddy, you are the she-heat. They're going to fucking hate me. I'm just saying right now. Wait until they meet Sam Ronan. Yeah, because I'm a younger, more angry Bernie who's also a clown.
Since we're here with this bipartisan delegation is to reassure our allies that there is tremendous support in Congress. We are the Article 1 branch of the Constitution, and I hope that we're going to hear a positive message from Secretary Rubio when he speaks.
Earlier this week, a pre-conference report says that the world has entered an era of, quote, wrecking ball politics, and labels President Trump a demolition man of world order. Meanwhile, this morning, German Chancellor Friedrich Merz said this.
It's not Friedrich Merz. It's Friedrich Merz. And if you're going to pronounce foreign people's names, especially if they're heads of state, you should probably do it correctly. Fucking American imperialist scum!
Even the United States will not be powerful enough to go it alone. Dear friends, being a part of NATO is not only Europe's competitive advantage, it's also the United States' competitive advantage. So let's repair and revive transatlantic trust together.
With us now is CNN political.
That actually sounded damn near presidential. Huh. Crazy. What that actually looks like and sounds like.
Political and national security analyst David Sanger. He's a White House and national security correspondent for the New York Times. Good to see you, David. So you just heard the German chancellor there say the U.S. is not powerful enough to go it alone. What is your reaction to that? And just expand on how important these relations are to U.S. national security.
Well, we were waiting to hear from Chancellor Merz, in part because we wanted to see whether he was going to continue the line that you heard from Canada's Prime Minister at the Davos meeting just a few weeks ago. And you'll remember that that was known for a discussion of the rupture with the United States. And while you just heard Chancellor Merz make the case that it was time to repair the relationship, most of his speech was about the importance for the Europeans not to be dependent on the U.S. And that really has been a theme through the year that he has been in office.
Well, and hear me out. Just hear me out. Maybe the de facto leader of the European Union has been talking about a lack of reliance upon the U.S. and her military and economy because, and again, hear me out, the president, pedophile traitor-in-chief, has been betraying the partnerships and alliances of NATO and the European Union since entering into office, going so far as to threaten to invade a NATO country. So, I don't think whatever you're about to say to try and schimpf the Deutsche Chancellor is going to make any damn bit of sense, because it is in Europe's best interest to figure it out for themselves, because there has now been a proven chance, a proven reality in which America does not support NATO or value NATO or value the EU. So because of that very real thing that happened, they now have to make decisions based on that thing happening again or getting worse in the future. So, yes, they absolutely should.
And you're beginning to hear discussions here that you never heard before, whether Germany needed to be underneath the French nuclear umbrella, not under just NATO's, because you might not be able to rely on the U.S., whether or not there needs to be a big enough military force in Europe that it could deal with Russia without the U.S. being there, at least for conventional forces. These are the kinds of conversations that were pretty unthinkable even during Trump's first term.
So last year, as so many of us recall, President J.D. Vance basically turned on European allies in that blistering speech that downplayed threats from Russia and China and put the blame on them for their problems, basically. Secretary of State Marco Rubio is taking a different tone already. Listen to what he said about Russia's war in Ukraine.
Do you expect to meet with President Zelensky when you're there?
I think so. I think he's going to be there, and there's a chance to see him. I believe it's on my schedule. I'm not 100% certain, but I'm sure we will. It's terrible. It's a war. That's why we want the war to end. People are suffering. It's the coldest time of year. It's unimaginable, the suffering.
You know what kills me about this motherfucker? Here he is, bored. I mean, he's trying to sound sincere, but he's clearly bored and distracted, right? Talking about, of course we want it to end. War's terrible and we want the suffering to end. Meanwhile, this regime is being just neon lights exposed for committing some of the, if not every single atrocity humanity has ever conceived, is invading our own cities, murdering our own citizens, maintaining concentration camps with thousands of children in them, invading foreign countries and threatening another. Like, are you fucking serious? Also, he is responsible for the invasion of Venezuela and the increasing blockade against Cuba and the threats against Colombia. This motherfucker wants war and conflict, but it's like, oh, Ukraine, Slavia Ukraine. Fuck off. Exactly. We shared a brain cell for a second there.
The problem with wars. That's why wars are bad, and that's why we've worked so hard for over a year now to try to bring this one to an end.
And start at least 3 others.
So how does this change in tone resonate with the allies of America right now there at the security conference?
Well, Secretary Rubio is going to be talking on Saturday morning, and I think many of the people who are in the hall for Vice President Vance's speech are going to want to go hear him. They'll be particularly listening for whether or not he uses the phrase from the National Security Strategy, which said that Europe was heading toward civilizational erasure. In other words, it was losing its European nature. But I think he will be a little bit more conciliatory. What's been striking here, though, is hearing the Europeans and the Ukrainians say, we want peace, but not at any cost. And a lot of skepticism that you will see President Zelensky ultimately be willing to give up land or settle for what may be halfway security measures. And we simply don't know enough detail yet about the negotiation and what the Russians will accept to know whether he'll have to make that choice.
Does it feel...
And what is European civilizational erasure? Is it a lack of Catholicism? Is it a lack of colonization? Is it a lack of global control and influence? Is it a lack of whiteness? Is it a lack of pedophile elites ruling from the dark and now apparently the light? Because what exactly has European offered the world? I'm sorry, European. What has Europe offered the world aside from war, genocide, colonization, more genocide, plagues, plural plagues, plundering of natural resources, subjugation and oppression of people, white supremacy, Christian fascism, actual fascism, the definition of fascism, and what else? Oh, the invention of capitalism, which commoditized and generated the underlying events that I just described. Honestly, European culture is horrific, horrendous. And even if we talk about the arts and the sciences and literature, China, India, and the Middle East met or exceeded European academics, culture, and art centuries before the Renaissance. So, like, even if we're talking about post-industrial revolution, we attribute a lot of our successes to non-European minds, because Europeans stole that shit and murdered the original thinkers and creators to cover their tracks. Looking at you. Thomas Edison wasn't European, but that was the first one that came to mind. All I'm saying. Oh wait, Europe murdered is it Alexander Turing? I believe it's Alexander Turing. They drove Alexander Turing to suicide, and he is the father of computing, but he was queer, right? And so therefore got to get rid of him, right? So I'm just saying, like, Europe has not benefited human civilization in any real meaningful way. It has caused a astronomical amount of harm. Again, most countries celebrate an Independence Day due to England having invaded and colonized them at one point. So, okay. That actually does kind of bring us to the end here, so I don't... The last video that I was thinking about doing was the fact that we're still bombing boats in the Caribbean, but I see Grim on the thumbnail, so we might be here until 11 if we try. Covering that one. The Incas were performing brain surgery and using anesthesia and sterilizing instruments years before Europe. Europe had a plague for being filthy and killing cats, even though it was rats that were spreading the plague. So, there is... Okay. Jeez, now my throat's dying on me. So, thank you for joining us on this stream. This is the end of our show for today. My name is Samuel Ronan, Ohio's 15th congressional candidate, 48th president. Here's all of my socials and online stuff. Please like, follow, share, subscribe. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday at 7 p.m. Oh, I can't reach over it. Where we will be doing a recap of anything we may have missed or anything that may transpire between then and now. Again, we focus on politics and policy from the perspective of an actual candidate and someone who is actually trying to get into office and not just a commentator. So, with that being said, I truly hope you enjoyed the stream. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your neighbors. I will see you tomorrow. Have a great night. Sam Ronan, out.